for welcoming me here and coming here to listen for me. I have to talk for my lunch. You've all got... but I mean, one of the great things is now housing in both parties actually is higher on the political agenda than at any time in my lifetime. I think it's a really exciting time for us, and I think the modular construction is a really exciting time. Actually, you know, better designed, and I was in the right place at the right time in Manchester. It was when the Manchester music thing was happening. We did a deal with the Stone Roses, we did a deal with the Happy Mondays, did a deal with James, all Manchester bands, and we were the first people to license the posters. So we started building up quite a big business. We were exporting them around the world, and it was again about value adding. You got a piece of paper that cost you 11p, a bit of print that cost you 16 pence, and I could export that for 50p a poster. I could wholesale it for £1.15 a poster to HMV, Virgin, all the record shops were going there, but I could retail it for £3. And so I thought, this is a secret, I might need to get into retail. So I was working in student unions and the universities. I had a stand on Camden Town Market, I had a stand in Portobello Road Market. I used to work Glastonbury, all the festivals, but I wanted a shop. So I went around Manchester, and Manchester was a very different Manchester than it was today. Knocked on the door of the nice surveyors and said, my name's Tom Bloxham, I've got an interesting business selling posters, can I rent a shop off you? I said, certainly Mr. Bloxham, can you send us 3 years accounts, we want to have a look at your covenants? I had no accounts clearly, and I thought covenant was where nuns lived. And eventually I hassled and took a 6,000 square feet, sort of about twice the size of this room, on the first and second floor in Oldham Street, on a 25-year lease. And I got totally naive. I paid £2 a year rent, but 25 grand on the service charge. And again, it taught me another lesson. The property industry wasn't supplying its customers. All my mates are entrepreneurs. Just want to know how much it's going to cost every week. They want to pay every week. They want easy in, easy out terms. They didn't want to sign a long lease. So anyway, I signed this long lease, had too much space to sell my posters, stuck into this service charge. What could I do? I started subletting the space. So it were people here, Dave Mallon, so you know Elvis Jeans, his first shop, a load of great people actually. Wayne Hemingway, Red or Dead, was one of my tenants. Started subletting the space, very quickly made more money from subletting the space than I did from selling the posters. And so I thought, hey, I'm a property developer, I'll get into property. Went to Liverpool, bought my first building, a place called Liverpool Palace. Paid 40 grand for 40,000 square feet. At the time, you could buy buildings for less than the price of decent carpet in Manchester and Liverpool. And started subletting the space, retail market downstairs. One of the guys working in the record shop said, can I rent an office off you? Did it for £5 a week. It was James Bart and Andy Cowell from Cream. Set up Cream there, and then we had the Farm and the Lars and Oceanic and designers and architects. And very quickly, we developed this, what you call a cluster now, and actually, in fact, it's exactly the same as we work are doing, but 25 years ago. And at that point, I sort of took a step back, and I realised in Manchester and Liverpool, there were these amazing empty buildings, the property industry written off. They said the old mills would never let. There was one called Sekisui House at the back of Piccadilly Station that was going to be demolished in terms of car park. We bought it from auction for 250 grand to save from demolition, and we turned it into managed workspace. We sold it last year actually for £9 million. Spent a bit of money in between on it. But there was just amazing stock of old, fantastic Victorian buildings that we thought we could do something with. And then in 1993, got together with Jonathan Folkingham, an architect, and actually finding new uses for these great old buildings, using contemporary design, which I thought all my mates were into, redesigning them cleverly, and actually creating something that was really special. So we started in Concert Square, and we cost us £27 a square foot to convert it. The first one we sold it for £60 a square feet. But at the time, only 200 people lived in Manchester or Liverpool, and so you couldn't buy a pint of milk or a loaf of bread in the city centre. In Manchester, at 6 o'clock at night, the shutters literally came down. No one was in the city centre. There were like, this restaurant was open actually, but it was like one of 2 or 3 restaurants in the whole of the city centre. It was actually there. And it was like a ghost town. On Sunday, nobody was in the city. And so gradually we thought people wanted to move back in the city centre. We'd seen what happened in New York and London. And we started developing more and more buildings. And over the course of time, developed a whole series of refurbishments initially, and then did new building. Then more recently, we were thinking about housing. Rather than apartments. And we noticed all the people who bought our apartments in the city centre, when they moved, none of them bought new build housing. We thought, why is that? You know, if you want to buy a car, do you want to buy a second-hand car or a new car? If you can afford to, you buy a new car. Why was 70% of the population choosing to buy second-hand housing? And we thought it was basically because of better designs. And I'm not talking stylistically here, but high ceilings, big windows. So we thought, if we want to get into housing, how will we do this? And sort of we did this modular housing design, which actually in some ways is quite revolutionary, but in some ways is incredibly conservative and is an old Victorian house redesigned with all the structure on the outside walls. But we thought, how can we make it efficiently and how can we make it cost effectively? And if you look at most things in life, look at your mobile phone, for instance. My first mobile phone was the size of a car battery. It cost me $2.5 grand. It was crap. Every time I buy a new mobile phone, it got cheaper and cheaper and better. I changed cars last year for the first time in 10 years. Exactly the same car I had 10 years ago. My new one cost me less money than it did 10 years ago. Our computers, our clothes, everything's getting cheaper and cheaper and better. Yeah, our housing is getting more and more expensive and actually no better. We thought, how can we change this? So we thought industrialisation must be the way. So we made a big punt and we started working with SIG systems. Last year we bought the factory in Alfreton, which has gone through a whole process and worked with BLP on the BOPAS accreditation. And that started working for us. It's still, it's difficult. We made a load of mistakes and we're still not there, but we're getting there. And we actually think the way to make houses better and more affordable and higher quality is the industrialisation process. The Industrial Revolution isn't something that happened for 20 years, in my view, in Manchester 200 years ago. It's an ongoing process. The sauces that our mothers and grandmothers would have made in the kitchen, we now buy in jars and packets from the supermarket. Everything is being made in factories. Houses are the last thing that's not being made in the houses. So we want to lead on this. So we started doing it, and we're doing a few hundred homes a year, and we're getting somewhere. But then about 2 years ago, we thought, if we really want to make some impact and make some scale, this is the first time in property, I believe this is a business we can scale up, because doing the big one-off buildings we've done, like Fort Dunlop or like Park Hill or like the Midland Hotel or Royal William Yard in Plymouth, they're all one-off buildings. You've got to find them. Everyone's different. You make different mistakes every time. Actually, on the modular housing, you can scale it, you can repeat it, you can learn from your mistakes. So I don't know what, if you look at a car, Golf, and about Mark 7 Golf now, aren't we? Everyone gets better, faster, cheaper. We can keep improving. So we thought, let's come and do this. And we also thought we're actually a relatively small private company. If we're going to be really serious about this, we need to get some help. We need to find some partners. So we appointed some advisors and we thought about a wish list of who we'd want to go to. And we thought two things. One, we want UK government as our partner, because a lot of the work we do is with local authorities, with the government. And actually, if you've got them inside, it gives you that credit assurance, the check. And then secondly, we thought, who is the biggest modular house builder in the world? And we looked around the world. We found a company called Sekisui House. We've actually made more houses than any other company on this planet, despite coming from a relatively small company in Japan. 76% of their houses are actually made modular, are carbon zero. All their houses are made in factories. They've got 4 million square feet factories. They've got 1,000 people working on R&D. They've got over 2,500 architects working in the business. It's an amazing scale business. They've got 50 odd years of expertise on this. And what was quite interesting is the culture was very similar. They're very interested in sustainability. They're very interested in doing the right thing. They're very interested in looking after their customer. They give indefinite warranties on their houses. Actually, that continues all the way through as long as you want to, which I think is a really interesting policy. And interestingly, a load of other companies, including some massive companies, had approached them and they didn't want to come there. So we were very flattered that they decided they want to partner with us. They've invested in a relatively small way for them, a bit of equity, about 25 million, taking a 35% stake in our modular business. We've demerged that business, and this business we really want to scale. We'll keep the existing urban splash business going. Homes England have come in with a 5% of the equity, plus some debt, which is always good to get debt from the government. And we now think we're in a place where we can expand, and our vision is to be building homes all over the country. We've got our existing factory. The first job is to get the product we've got right at the moment. It's still not there. It's getting better and better. But there's still more to do. We want to get that factory running at full capacity. And unlike some other people, what we're not doing is going out to other people saying, show us your product, we'll make it for you. We want one product going through our factory, our own product, non-stop. A bit like car factories. They don't make Land Rovers one week and Minis the other week. They make Land Rovers or they make Minis. So we're going to get our factory at full capacity, and then the next move is to actually go out and hopefully look for a super factory site somewhere in the country, which is we'll be doing later on this year and next year. So very, very exciting times for us. Great to be here in Manchester, my home city. The sun always shines in Manchester, as you'll have seen today. Quick summary of my story, but very happy to take any questions if we've got time. We're on time, just about. Any questions anybody wants to ask me?
Can I ask something, Tom? Pete from Great Places. So when you mentioned about a super factory. So eventually will you be manufacturing your homes to a point of, say, like the car industry will manufacture and perhaps retain stock? Or will you be building to sales programs on your sites?
So two different questions. I mean, the idea we've got is actually we want to reduce the capital employed the maximum possible. So every time we get on site, and it takes us 3 or 4 weeks in the factory, to be fair, it takes us probably 6 months before the house even arrives there, doing the foundations and the services and everything else. Then actually making the house 3 or 4 weeks in the factory, we can assemble 3 houses in a single day, then about another month or so to zip it all up. At that point on completion, we want to sell those and get the cash for them. So we want to use a multi-10-year model. So clearly, most of them are made bespoke for the customer. And every customer, like buying a brand new car, you go into our sales suite, you decide, do you want the kitchen on the top floor or the bottom floor? Do you want an open plan? A 3-story house can be anything from 1 bedroom to 7 bedrooms. You design it yourself, but everyone gets sold. Sometimes we've got to do a whole street and they haven't been sold. So sometimes if they haven't been sold, we'll put them into our own PRS fund that we've actually set up and we're growing that. And we're also interested in working with RPs on putting someone to affordables, have a multiple tenure. So we actually don't want to keep stock because it's expensive keeping stock and we want to have everything sold or rented straight away. The super factory though is to increase capacity. Our existing factory can probably do 500 or 600. We're working with other factories. We're working with a factory in Spain doing a CLT model. We're still doing lots of conventional construction as well.
Simon Bass, I'm an architect at HDA and we do quite a lot of modular construction. I think it's really interesting that you quite often get to deal with your customer. One of the things that we hardly ever get to do when designing housing is speak to the people who are going to live in it in the end. But what we can do as architects and designers is go and speak to the people that ultimately live in it and find out how well it's gone. And you're talking about this constant process of evolution and improvement. Do you have a structure in place to go back, find out how people are enjoying the select choices that they've made, how the spaces and the volumes are working for them after a month, after a year? Or
yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, it's amazing. And Sekisui House, again, a lot of them, they give the relationship with the customer the whole of their time and they send people in there every year. We're not as good as that, there's more we can do, but absolutely, I typically do dinners with the customers and I get involved myself just to listen to them, what goes on. And I won't say everything goes perfectly, there's snags and there are issues with them and we put those right. And we do all the usual customer research forms of that all the other house builders do. But we really try to get into it, understand from people how they live, what works, what doesn't work, and this process of constant improvement. So every time we bring a new one out, like in a car manufacturer, and what we tend to do is get all the information, feed it all in, and then make it on a Mark 3 now. So you're a Mark 1, a Mark 2, a Mark 2.5, a Mark 3, and keep bringing out new Mark 3s. So you go around on the 5th, 6th site now, if you go around each of our different sites, you can see the improvements happening all the time. But yeah, the customers know best. I mean, it's interesting with the property industry. Every other industry in the world is trying to get closer and closer to the customer. It's the basic rule. The property industry has invented a whole profession called surveyors, whose very purpose is to separate the supplier from the customer. And by and large, particularly in the residential side, the residential letting side, most people renting don't even know who owns their building. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. Have we got time for any more questions?
Actually, I have a question.
Definitely our host has time for a question.
I've just swapped hats.
Yeah, I've got lots of hats.
From a housing association perspective, one of the things that came through this week, actually, at some of the panels that I listened to, were the maintenance costs for modern methods of construction and how you assess those and how you manage those. And interestingly, there didn't seem to be a definitive answer in terms of whether maintenance costs at AMC were any cheaper or more expensive than traditional brick and block. And for that sector, that is a really, really, really important question. And I just wondered if you had a view on that.
No, I mean, for every sector is important. And there isn't any great evidence on it because it's relatively new and you only get the evidence over time. But what I would say, what we're doing is nothing different than anywhere else. We're basically making timber frame buildings, yeah? The only difference is they're a bit stronger and a bit more robust. Because if you imagine most of the houses you're building, if you've got a crane to lift those up, they'd collapse immediately. all our pods we're doing totally volumetrically, so each floor is being craned into place, floor by floor, so it gives them an inherent rigidity and an inherent strength. And then, I mean, people always ask this question. I mean, we get the bow patch, I think it's a 60-year guarantee, you know better than me, but actually any building will last forever if you look after it. We've still got thatched cottages made of wharfed and dab, or whatever it's called there, yeah? And yet we're still knocking down concrete and steel buildings built 20 years ago. So to me, it's more about maintenance than that, and there's nothing intrinsically more expensive about maintaining them as any other home.
Can I ask another question? You mentioned about carbon and energy efficiency. Is your product enhanced standard from building regs?
It's much enhanced in building regs, yeah. It only gets code B, is it? I mean, again, we had a conversation before. And the reason we get downgraded, you know, it's a super airtight, super insulated. The reason we get downgraded is because we haven't got gas heating, we've got electric heating. Yeah, if you buy a car, what is most environmentally friendly? Electric car or gasoline car? Yeah, the reason we get downgraded is we've got huge windows, yeah, which let in natural light. But you get downgraded because you've got less insulation. And so there are loads of issues like this. And actually the way we measure carbon efficiency, all the embodied carbon, we're actually carbon positive because the carbon that comes in from the wood that's actually built in it is so much more sustainable than concrete or steel, and actually it's from managed timbers, is given off oxygen the whole time. So there's a huge number of ways. So I believe they're absolutely sustainable, and far more so than most homes. And the other thing that always gets on my wick is you get this zero carbon a year house, invariably in the middle of the countryside with 4 car parking spaces. But the most important thing is actually where the house is, and is it near transport, and can you walk to and from it? You know, again, most of ours are very well located for those hubs. I'll take one more question, and then I know we'll all want to have our lunch.
So I'll just more about sort of consumer attitude, consumer behaviour, customer. Because obviously, the UK's got used to these pastiche sort of cliche buildings that come out from house builders. Do you see a particular demographic or is interested in the model you're developing, or do you see a need to actually, or would you see a need to changing that customer perception to widen that demographic?
So the actual experience is very wide. I mean, clearly there are a lot of people who are design orientated, a lot of architects buy our homes, a lot of people into design. I usually answer this question by saying, look at the furniture. When I was a kid, the only furniture you could buy was actually reproduction Georgian and Victorian furniture, and everybody had reproduction pastiche furniture in their homes. Today, you look at your home, and you've got modern furniture from IKEA or Habitat, or something most people have there, or classic Italian furniture. You've got modern hi-fi and computers. Everything's very modern, yet we're buying these pastiche houses. And if you look at the technology of houses, we started with little Tudor windows with those tiny diagonal ones. As technology got better and better, you got square Georgian ones, you then got bigger Victorian ones, you then got plate glass. For some reason, 1945, everything went backwards, and we went to this sad nostalgia of looking at, and don't get me wrong, I love Georgian architecture, I think it's fantastic, but it's fantastic because we've got great proportions, it's there. We shrink it all down to tiny little, 2.3 metre ceiling heights, tiny windows, and it's a bastardised pastiche of what it should be like. And actually, I don't think people do like that. And I know the house builders say they don't care what they build, they only build what people want, and that's all the choice they've had. In the same way, when we started developing the city centre Manchester 25 years ago, house builders said, well, listen, we don't mind building the city centre, we'll build anywhere. Nobody wants to live in the city centre. And they didn't want to live in the city centre, nobody had any choice. You give them a choice of buying a loft apartment in the city centre. And of course, a few years later, we've got 50,000 people living in the city centre. So I believe that tastes are changing. I believe most people are contemporary. Most people want to look forward, not backward. Not everybody, but to be honest with you, if you want a pastiche house, you've got plenty of choice anyway. I'm looking for 1% of the market share in the short term. If I do that, which is about 2,500 homes a year, then I'll be very happy.
Thank you very much, Tom.